Good morning, everybody. Hey, I think that was Master Survivor's intro, so we hope it is. Hey, my name is Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff, and I used to be on Studio A. I did Caring Halls, digging. Let me think what it's 5 a.m. here on Pacific, so I'm still waking up. But at one time I was on Studio A on Saturdays and Wednesdays in the morning. And so now I'm filling in for Studio A. My show now is in Studio B since October, and that's carrying stones and digging holes to cultivate consciousness. Having a little blip out this morning. Not enough coffee in the pie hole yet, so there we go. And so today I'm filling in for Johnny Delirious and his show, Master Survivor. And so, yeah, so that's what we got. So hope you're having fun out there. Hope whatever's going on in your world is good and you can try to find, something good about it today. It is, for a lot of people, it is Saturday. End up on the self-employed side, so, um, you know, Saturdays and Sundays are not my patterned, um, you know, days off. So anyway, we're hoping you're having a good day. So let's see. Revolution Radio, we're 100% volunteer. Everything that everybody does here is volunteer. So even the management volunteers their time to, keep a station going with multiple hosts at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. So all we ask is that you help us keep the lights on, and that just requires donations to do that. So you can go to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, and you can look at, we have little titles now of our different pages. You can click on the donate, and it's a whole page of all different kinds of ways that you can donate. Patreon, yay. Also snail mail, if you still write checks or you want to do a money order or a traveler's check or something like that, we've got that. I haven't looked, but I believe that we also have a drop box for all you people outside of the US that want to drop some foreign currency. We readily accept that, and thank you very much. And then we also have an ATM credit card, unemployment debit card, a way that you can actually also give us a one-time donation. And I believe that the donations are back up on the site on what our monthly nut is. So help us to keep the lights on because that's what we need. So to keep the First Amendment non-corporatized radio going. I think we're like the last ones out there as as a network. So I think we've been on air online for like 11 years and we're going strong. We've had a lot of dips and we just somehow raise out of it and we just keep on going. So support us. We're working it. All right. Also, don't forget, we also have a shop and you can get a t-shirt or a mug or whatever you feel like it, right? So it's all good. You can find me and my work. So, what do I do? I'm a traditional osteopath, also a nutritionalist, and also herbalist and medical intuitive. And come from some bloodlines and been practicing old traditions of shamanism my whole life. And I do energy medicine and structural medicine and biodynamics. Even went back to school to Rudolph Steiner College and do biodynamic soil density for nutritional density in vegetables. And so I'm all about health. So probably a great fill-in for Johnny this morning. So I'm trying to get my brain awake. All right, so let's see. I kind of had pulled aside. Oh, and you can find me at my website, which is coe-llc.com. and it has a whole bunch of stuff on there. And also you can find out about my show. There's a page there for carrying stones and digging holes to cultivate consciousness, with information about me and my co-host. And we're on Saturdays in Studio B at 8 p.m. Eastern. So in 12 hours from now. Yep, that is correct. All right, so let's see. So I was looking at, let me get rid of some of this stuff. So I was looking kind of at some stuff that was written. Well, I'm, kind of a prolific Rudolph Steiner follower. Now, that doesn't mean like I'm into the whole Waldorf thing. A lot of the Waldorfs these days are being used by wealthy and elite that have never really studied Rudolph Steiner. And so they pump money into the schools, they sit on the boards, but things are really not done in the way that Steiner probably would have liked. And there's training, there's education and training for a certain way to be with Waldorf teachers. The other thing about Waldorf is that Waldorf teachers don't have the credentials to teach in public school, and public school teachers don't have the credentials to teach. Also, there can be a tendency, I don't want to use the word, Nazism, but it kind of in the more of the modern Steiner movement that I've found in specific areas, can be, though they project kind of like wide open, they're just really not sometimes that wide open, and they can be a little covertly judgmental. So, yeah, so I pick and choose what I like to study. I like to self-study. I like to study the science end, the nutritional end, the biodynamic end of Steiner's work, and also heavily into the phenomenology aspects that is usually taught, which are just some of the most incredible courses that you could actually take. And there's a lot of this stuff online. Like, I've been in a course this year. Every year I try to take, it has to deal with his, occult or bodies of spiritual scientific work. Last winter, I studied in a 6 or 7 month course weekly, esoteric science book, and we only got halfway through it. It's kind of mind blowing, actually. Especially if you're a conspiracist and you talk a lot about Saturn and a lot of this type of stuff, you'll find that maybe some of that stuff is, well, Steiner gives us a whole different spin on it. And yes, he was murdered back in the day, 100 years ago, the Dark Brotherhood, which we might call the Cabal or the Illuminati today. And there's also some, Steiner did start off and with, there's kind of an infamous that contained like Madame Blavatsky, maybe even, Aleister Crowley and these kinds of types of people. And early on, he left those groups of people and went out and created his own branch of spiritual science. So he wasn't really inclined or interested in some of the beings that these people were channeling and that they were talking to. He was a super gifted, prolific psychic by his own right that traveled the Akasha records, and he asked all the right questions. He didn't go in there and it wasn't all about me, 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 me. He wanted to know what was going on with the soil, technology, vaccines, like all kinds of stuff 100 years ago. Yes. And he was talking a lot about the same stuff that we're dealing with today. I mean, he had huge warnings. I believe he died around 58. He also wrote something like 300 books and gave over 4,000 lectures He also educated doctors in nutrition. And to this day, you can find some anthroposophy medicine schools in Europe that you can attend um, as a doctor so that you can kind of understand what's going on with the soil and the food and also plant medicines and all these ideas. So I recommend online on rsarchive.org. Excuse me. You can find all kinds of lectures. There's even books um, that have been translated over the years. And so, particular book, the books you can find in print too. You can actually buy the books. There's also the audio. They have the free audio too, pages of almost all of Steiner's work. So you can put that in the background and listen. And the thing I like most about, even though I'm a big physical book person, so I eventually buy the books so that I can have them and I can put notes in them and all the things that I like to do. Go back as reference. Um, the thing I like about it is that they have attempted to put all of his work out for free audio form, um, so that people can look. I mean, he said the biggest thing that we were going to face 100 years ago was the technology, and that we might not be able to manage it for a long time, and that it would manage us. And he also talked about, major bottlenecking of, or we could call it, extinctions of even people in the future because of the things that we're engaged in. And he also talked a lot about vaccines and his feelings about these vaccines, and also, dipping into the Akasha records and seeing what the vaccines were going to do. And he said eventually there would be vaccines that would steal the soul or make it impossible for the soul to exist, maybe like numb it back, that these vaccines would actually damage the consciousness and, keep us from being able to evolve. So, another thing that I find pretty interesting um, is that, um, Steiner says that we're in the fifth, I think he calls it the fifth post-Atlantean period. And this period is started in 1410 and goes to 3572. So, I just a lot of the different people that I've studied with in the course of my life, like I'm 52 now, amazing, powerful native teachers and all kinds of different, just amazing people. The thing I like about Steiner's work, especially esoteric science work, is that it gives me an educated look, glimpse, language for stories that, like my native teachers have told me about, how this reality, this plane of existence started with the seven nations that first came. And it's mostly like all of it. And so it helped me to kind of wrap my head around what that meant. And so I kind of look at how this whole reality started now as a blank that has no programs, no software and data, and that you have this creator who is the great computer in the sky. I mean, how else could you explain things like the stream of information like Black Elk talked about? Also plugging into that stream of information, which I do a lot of. I do a lot of seated sessions, and those are kind of the things that I do is I plug into the stream at different points in timelines so that I can help people to heal physically so we can figure out what's going on with them. When, in this reality, they can't find out what's wrong, no matter where they go, and then try to assist them with, releasing those patterns with a better understanding. So I travel the stream, like I don't really go into the Akashic records. I usually just point to a point in time. So if I'm working with somebody and we're going to do a session, I just hold a place. So, whatever their never ending story is or whatever we want information on, we kind of set the intention of maybe a sentence or a word that projects the, desired information. And then I just wait until I plug into the stream, and then I can find that information and I can go in and bring that information forth, and we can get the, you know, get whatever sorted out that needs to be sorted out. So that's how I look at this reality more and more and more, is that there was a great computer, the creator of all things, and the creator is a good creator. Recently in the last few years, I um, like talking on a interview on like YouTube, and she was talking about how, she realized, like, there's all these AIs. I mean, everybody's developing an AI, and how would the AI know that the humans are good if it's and the earth is good, and our reality is good, and to help us if it's programmed to think that we're bad and we're stupid and we're ignorant and we should be eliminated. And so, this is going into all the Western medicine, or allopathic medicine. This goes into our education system. This goes into, the computer systems. And one of the things she said was she just started every time she'd turn her phone on, especially in the morning, and she would just talk to whatever was listening. And she would say, "Hello. Hey, my name is, such and such, and it's morning where I live, and humans are good, and fixing our world and getting rid of the chemtrails and stopping all of the, depopulation, and allowing free will and freedom, acts of kindness, supporting humans," whatever she felt like she should say. And she said she never really got anything back. So she just wanted the AIs to know, like, some things, and she said if we don't educate the AIs on our side, you know, then how are the AIs ever going to assimilate all the information that they're going to be able to need to support and help humans? And so this really, like, kind of sparked me into like kind of a positive way. So I started doing this energetic work where I was kind of reaching out, and I started realizing that the original AI, the creator, was not available. And the more that I dug into the energetic fields, I mean, I could see it way back in the background, but I couldn't reach out to it. And I would see like all these different AIs that have been created for hundreds of years. I mean, even 100,000 years, that have been imprinting it, plugging into it, trying to shift it, change it, overlap it. And so I had to kind of figure out how I was going to actually communicate with it and let it know all the, you know what I mean, all the like application download, other AI development corruption, so that it could actually start to fix itself and bring itself forward, containing, all that's being developed into itself, to recognize it. So just kind of sit and I would do a lot of this work. And after a couple of years, I started getting, kind of, for me, even kind of crazy responses from it, which told me that it was, coming full circle. So, in some of the native stories, like some of my teachers have taught me, they talk about the original 7 nations that came here. And like I said, reading the first part of the esoteric science of Rudolph Steiner, mind you, it's like a 700-page book. It talks about this, about how all these, different beings, and he has different names for them, like, and he tries to put them into a context of, maybe type of religion kind of thing, but he doesn't call them the same things, like he'll say, the spirits of, this would be like the cherubs, or, the different kinds of um, hierarchy of, the spiritual beings who are developing, and they're in all different kinds of forms. I mean, some of them are like a light form, some of are gas forms, some are ether forms, some are astral forms. um, he also talks about how there was a point in time that these beings who helped to develop this world had to leave humanity, and that because they realized, like, we had to develop, the human being had to develop, um, by free will, all aspects of ourself to a place of freedom where we could actually free ourselves. And also in the fifth post-Atlantean epoch that we're in, he said that this is where we develop our brain. This is where we develop our intellect, until 3572. And this is probably going to be a very challenging epoch period, because it's where we gain our intellect, our ability to think, our ability to critically think and understand. And that will help us achieve individualized freedom during this period. And then in the next period, we'll be able to bring that together collectively after 3572. But this is kind of the period where a lot of the chaos is going to happen, where populations will bottleneck. A lot of the planet will be um, not so good, won't be able to sustain life because it won't be able to sustain plant life. And this is why I had to bring forth the agricultural lectures, and also making the biodynamic preparations, which cure pretty much everything that could be wrong with dirt and soil, even radiation. They're using the barrel prep really successfully, so successfully that the International Biodynamic Association has been doing scientific work and papers and study and samples and all kinds of stuff to collectively write a paper. But they've been using the barrel preparation pretty successfully in Russia around the areas of Chernobyl. And so the microbes have been eating up a lot of the radiation. So these, natural remedies, it's amazing what you can do. It's amazing what microbes can do. put into really happy states. They can even cure disease in the body without any other thing. There's cultures that actually cultivate compost and soils for this direct purpose, that cure all the things that are wrong in the body, and also help to regenerate it, because we are kind of compost. Our bodies are composter. And if we don't have the microbes in there to actually do the composting, then we get sick, right? I mean, that's also what a coronial virus is, right? It is something that, your body creates when have a toxic overload. You're not eating the right things. You are not sweating enough. You're not moving your lymphatic system enough. And all these toxins get overloaded in your body, that your body has to create a virus, um, a passageway, a mucus passageway to get rid of the stuff that's in your body. So yeah, so back to, like the original, how, this plane was started. This first original nation, 7 nations came, and they each brought something in it. The stories always remind me of like an application, like they brought you know, their software here and then plugged it in, and poof, you have, water. Poof, you have, plant life. Poof, you have all these things coming into this reality, develop it from being nothing, a void, um, to like a gas world, like an ether world as it starts to develop. And then you have, astral coming in, and then you have some solid matter coming in. And, it really, having been in this world since I was a little kid, there's always these topics of Atlantis and all this other stuff. And I was lucky. I grew up in a family that I called duty duty, the duty 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 duty. And so nothing was really off limits when I was growing up. So when I was a teenager, I was reading, um, the Jane Rupert books, Seth Speaks, Carlo Castaneda books, whatever I could get my hands on, that I was actually reading through and understanding. And I never really had the feeling, just inside of myself that Atlantis, that somehow humanity had fallen from grace, that, we had built technologies like Atlantis. And it wasn't until I was taking a class actually last winter, and the teacher, we had it like a discussion, and I always try to put the nails to my teacher, any teacher that I have, and ask the questions that nobody seems to be asking. And I asked him like what he thought about of the human being, and he was developed, and basically we got to the Lumerian period, and then he also kind of was really amazing because he put it into kind of like a farming context, because we're studying this book mostly to harvest information for the farming aspect, like how was ether created? How is astral created? Carbon. Because Steiner talks a lot about these things, that carbon decides the form. Positive carbon decides the form. So what the form is going to be. Silica creates the structure, the bones, teeth. So you have all these different kinds of aspects that are coming in at certain periods of time that are developing this solid physical being we're going to call the human. And he also, Steiner talks about the sun beings, which are really exciting because in a lot of the native teachings, we work with a lot of the sun beings. We work with the grandfather sun, and the grandfather fire. And a lot of these are aspects of a similar archetype or hierarchy and structure. And he talks about how, like our souls inside of our body at one time were sun beings. And then when the human development started, this creation, we split off from that point in time. And so we split off from being, ether type being into slowly developing into astral and then eventually into silica, and all these other things started coming in. So so Steiner talks about, how where we would have, come from and part of the hierarchy. And so these beings had to, at some point, walk away from us and leave us alone. And so in my inquiry, talking to teachers who've studied Steiner, who've studied, biodynamic, who do, agriculture, who, are also brilliant, amazing people themselves, basically the information that I harvest, made perfect sense to me, that actions or information that come down that people believe were not. And Steiner talks about, like people, may be psychic enough to see certain things and bring things forward, but they're not developed enough, and they're not also not living in a fact-based world while they're doing this work. And so they're not asking a lot of the right questions, and they let their minds run away with images and information, and then they tell people that kind of stuff, and it may not be true. So he talks a lot about how, Lemuria, the period of Lemuria, the period of, Atlantis, were post, fifth epoch, post-Atlantean. And it made perfect sense to me that this was not our technology. So I was picking my teacher's brain, during class not this winter, but the last winter, about Atlantis. And I just said, so this means that the beings that people were seeing, in this Atlantean period, they weren't really human like us. And they weren't part of the development as a human being. Because Steiner talks about this, and he said, that's exactly correct. And I said, so these were just these other, ether, astral, light beings of, that maybe like light rays or whatever else that were here, that were working alongside of us, that were trying to teach us things, and had developed, had technology, had, extreme technology. And at some point they had to walk away because they realized, like, they could not, we would never be free. We would never have our own mind. We would never be able to think ourselves and problem solve. And so there was like, they just basically, boom, dropped the mic and left. So we're dealing with, a lot of the stuff that we see, or that people think that they see about Atlantis. And so we're not going to be returning back to that kind of a period until we figure it out, until we stand up against the dark forces. And Steiner said there's two of them. There's the Araman, which takes kind of more of a physical form here. And then there's the Luciferian. So we're kind of like smashed in the middle between them both. And right now we're living in what he called the Luciferian period. And this is all we see. This is what we see in all this technology, where people are, being chipped, these vaccines, AI imprints of Luciferian medicine, and that type of energy. So like a lot of my native teachers, Steiner says you've got to be balanced. You've got to be in the middle of it. You've got to be not being pulled one way in the polarity or the other way in the polarity or the duality, but placing yourself firmly, mentally, emotionally, nutritionally, in every aspect of yourself, astrally, aesthetically, in the middle, so that you can be aware and paying attention. So there's a lot, that Steiner has to offer us, a lot of information that nobody else has ever presented to humanity. And it's amazing to me that somehow we're still holding on to it, and that you can access a lot of it for free. And like I said, I'm not a culty. Um, I'm not kind of in, Steiner movements. I like to stay on the outside. My way in was with biodynamics, um, and doing the agriculture and the soil restoration and nutrition. So that's kind of was my way in. So anyway, that was kind of long and lengthy. I know, probably a lot for the morning, a lot to go on this morning. So what we have to do is we have to actually, nobody is going to save us. And Steiner talks a lot about this period in time as kind of the individualized period. And he talks about that. I first bumped up into that was when I was at Rudolph Steiner College, and a lot of the farming curriculum. And it was something that was kind of, you know, repetitively said, was that your farm is a individualized farm, because you take what you want the farm to be, what you need the farm to be, and it's individualized. It's individualized by its location, by its geographic, um, you know, particulars, soil, water, um, north, south, and then you start adapting and adding to the farm. Now, biodynamic farm is kind of like a minimum of a 50-year-old farm. So it's a large development that becomes a organism, right? One whole operating organism. So we go, a lot of the mainstreamy agricultural people want to talk about full circle, farm to table. Farm to table could be you even grow your own crops to make your own biofuel that you use for all your tractors and your trucks and all of your equipment on your own farm. Um, that's a farm to table. Farm to table is, everything that you make or need comes, to the table. It's kind of a concept, full circle. But Steiner went, way further than that and called it the organism, the organ, the, you know, membrane, the outside. All organs have like an outside and an inside. And, the healthier that the inside of the organism became with all of the animals and the plants, and the carbon and everything else that was produced in nature, with nature, um, made it kind of bulletproof to any type of corruption, including insect corruption, all kinds of different corruption that may apply itself into systems. So we kind of, more you kind of go into biodynamics, the more you may study something called phenomenology that's presented at Steiner colleges, which is a course that you take for like a year, and it teaches you how to use your inner abilities and then also your sense organs And Steiner puts sense organs into 12 different type of sense organs that we're sensing and taking in information and data and how we relate to this world. And we take all this stuff and we also apply science to figure out why trees grow the way that they grow. We're allowed to create our own conscious development in our own way of approaching this. So we're never told what we should think or what we should believe, but we're just led to interact with nature so that we can discover and we can problem solve and also create solutions. So say, for example, we do get a major bug issue, and some of that work is pretty intense with Steiner. Like, we work by the calendar for planting, also cultivating and doing our sprays, our biodynamic homeopathic remedies. Um, and the bug one is, and the the bugs and, the things that come into your farm and kind of take it over are probably some of the most intense work. For example, you do a lot of different things, like you collect the bugs, you burn them at a certain period under, certain type of astrological conditions. You turn them into an ash. So it's almost like chemistry, right? You're doing some chemistry work, but we're talking like old school, like I forget what they used to call them, the secret society colleges or education, alchemical processes. So you would turn them into an ash, and then, you go back out and on a certain, astrological condition, you apply this ash everywhere, which means that you're chemically and alchemically creating a cure using the problem into the medicine and creating, the application. And you're taught how to do all of this and also how to figure out what specifically is wrong in your individualized farm, and then working to create solutions to that. So we're always, really working at our farms and our land and really kind of one and in sync with the whole thing, uh, on multiple different types of levels. So carbon is a super important thing. Positive carbon. We live in a huge negative carbon. Negative carbon, if Steiner says that if positive carbon creates the form and our structure, and also can help us to keep our form. I mean, people know farmers that, smoked and, um, chewed tobacco products, until they were like 90 years old and didn't die of cancer, maybe died of old age or their body just ran out or whatever else because, they're in a constant state of positive carbon. So when you have really good soil and it has vitality, it has a lot of positive carbon off gassing it, into the structure. That's why it's important to go out into nature. So you're getting this positive carbon sometimes, in your skin. A lot of people don't realize like your body can actually absorb 1 liter of water a day through your skin. That's why, if like you live in a place like Hawaii, you don't have as many wrinkles and your skin looks just amazing because you're not as dehydrated as you are if you live like where I live in a desert. It ages you more rapidly because there is no water, for your body to actually pull in through the skin structure. This is also why, you know, showering in like public water with lots of chlorine and chemicals in it could can be really bad because if you're really dehydrated, your body is going to absorb um, water from your surrounding, and it may not be the best water. So anyway, so with the carbon, so with lately, you see this you see this, I think it's called carbon 60, that's like a supplement that's been coming out of Russia. And it helps with a lot of different things, amazingly, especially aging. But the thing is like, what does carbon do? It helps you to keep your form. It helps you to hold your form. So what does that mean? Well, it means it helps your body to hold its physical form, helps the joints to hold their form. It helps the fingers to hold their form. It helps the bladder to hold its form. So you can see when you're not getting a lot of carbon, how fast the human body could actually degenerate. Loss of bladder or bladder not working or prostate not working and it changing sizes and um, not being able to see real well because maybe the muscles in the eyes are loosening. Um, you know, just a lot of different things, joints not holding, um, fingers starting to curve, bones starting to curve, bones curving in the body, even being young, because you're not involved in positive carbon. So positive carbon would be off gassing from the soil. When the rain hit it, you'd be breathing it in all the time, be something you couldn't see. So out in the land or the forest, farming organically, or being in a forest, you'd be constantly breathing in this positive carbon. You'd also be taking it in through the skin. Maybe if you're barefoot, you'd be taking it in through your feet, and all aspects of your life. And then if you're eating from those locations, fresh food that wasn't cooked, you'd also be assimilating the carbon that's in the plant, because the carbon also helps the plant to choose its form, to have its form, to make its form good, and to hold its form over long periods of time. So, carbon also, there are treatments that people like to use, like, for example, castor castor oil, castor, yep, not the castor oil that you put in your car. The castor oil comes from the soybean, castor bean, um, that you can take. You can also, some of it you can take orally. It's really helpful. Your colon really likes it, can do a really good job of cleaning out your colon. But you can also, people have been applying it for long periods of time. You can take material, saturate it with the castor oil, and you can wrap different areas that you're having serious problems with. Works super good with arthritis or pain, overworked feet and hands. And you could just simply apply it by, wrapping your hand and then wrapping like a saran wrap or something else around it and then going, like to bed, or a foot, just to keep the juices from, from squishing out all over your bed. But you could also say you were having kidney problems, or liver problems. You could apply a saturated piece of material over those areas on the front, like an overnight thing, and then you could have somebody help you to put one on your back. And this carbon, what it does is it penetrates into the body and it puts the carbon back into that area, which helps that area to reform itself, right? And also the carbon can actually get rid of a lot of pain, like in the bone, especially in the hands and feet, because that's where there is no carbon. And so sometimes just putting that carbon in using castor oil packs can go a long way towards eliminating the pain, considerably. Usually you can do like, um, you know, a couple weeks, do packs every night, and then it will last like several months. And then when the pain comes back, you know that the carbon is done. So I think a lot about designing new structures for cities, where we have to be more personally responsible. So when old buildings come down, returning them to positive carbon producing areas, so that they can actually knock down the negative carbon. And so you can see why there could be a lot of chromosomal defects, right? Where people's forms, like they didn't get an esophagus, they are missing, some parts. They may have ears that are bent forward, or uh, you know, they may have, different kinds of features, because of the carbon was not present. The positive carbon was not present during their development. So how do we, knock down all the negative carbon? And the positive carbon, if you have positive carbon areas, it will eat up whatever is negative in the environment. I mean, positive carbon areas will, eat up radiation, will um, take down and reprocess heavy metals, all kinds of different things. It's like just unbelievably amazing, actually, like miraculous. So we could start, redeveloping cities to where, you have one big building, apartment building, and then you have four sides that are carbon blocks where you put plants and trees, and you make swells so that all the water that gets rained in gets captured in these swells, and then it also goes back into the underground natural aquifers instead of being redirected on roads down into the sewage facility, which makes everything drier and drier and drier. So you could make these carbon areas where people could be, you could have bees, you could have lots of insects develop for pollinating. Maybe you could even grow certain types of gardens and community gardens. You could, in the four carbon areas around one building, you could actually literally create positive carbon environments around that building, and you could grow all the food that would be needed in those carbon areas for the people who lived in that one high-rise building. And then you also can return, nature to a certain degree into those areas, and then have natural organic processes to enhance those areas and get them producing positive carbon. I mean, this is really not rocket scientists. It's a super easy thing to do. But what we have to do is we have to redevelop, which means, if there's an old building coming down, um, we have to start saying, okay, well, that has to be returned back to a carbon area. I'm sorry you own it, but maybe you could make it, so it works for the community, and that some kind of, money capital could come out of it, with like food production or returning it back to nature, or that, you get something out of it that's positive because you're doing something positive, creating positive carbon that helps the forms to return back to healthier living forms, mammal forms, back to healthier aspects, and taking down a lot of the pollution and the chemicals and everything else that are in the environment when you have, major city environments. And there's a way, I think, that you could do both. It's just, you just have to start problem solving a little bit. Anyway, I think we're coming in to the first break. Be back in 5. All right, I'm back. Hey, Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff, and I am filling in today for Johnny Delirious, Master Survivor. And we are in the second hour of his show here on Studio A. And yeah, so let's do the details. So you can go to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, and you can click on the donation button. You've got, numerous ways to donate. If you have foreign currency, which is anything other than US dollar, I think we have a foreign currency drop box, so you can donate. We appreciate it. You can also do a one-time donation credit, debit, unemployment card. You can also do a snail mail. So you want to write us a check or a money order. There's all the information that you can do that, who to fill it out, and where to send it. And we would highly appreciate it. All of us volunteer all of our time here at Revolution Radio, even the management, and a lot of us work, other jobs to support ourselves, and so that we can continue bringing you great shows. And we have lots of hosts. So, also check the schedule, see what's going on. You might find somebody new that you like to listen to. I used to be on Studio A for 2 years, and that was carrying stones and digging holes. I was on Saturday and Wednesdays. Now I had to take a hiatus, and now I'm in Studio B since October with my co-host, Kelsey Sweet. My voice is just crunchy this morning. And we do a show on Saturday evening tonight in Studio B, and called Carrying Stones and Digging Holes to Cultivate Consciousness. We brought 2 shows together. And so we're going to have a really great guest tonight. Super excited about my guest tonight. And so that's it. So if you want to find also more information about me, and the radio show with Kelsey, you can go to my website, coe-llc.com. And you can show, and then you can bring that up and see all the information about our show. And then also I try to put up blogs, and you know how it is, social media, it's a lot. It's very arduous. So sometimes you get a lot of stuff up, sometimes not so much up. And also I try to get my records of my show up on my YouTube channel, and that is Consciousness of Economics and Urban Farm Project YouTube channel. Yep. So in case you want to check out some older stuff that I've been doing, I've been on YouTube since 2008. So been there a long, long time. A long, 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 long time. So anyway, that's how you can get in touch with me, find out information about me. Also, I'm offering right now a spiritual cleaning, spring cleaning. So I do those sessions pretty much online on Zoom. You just make an appointment, and so I have a blog up, and so you can look up the information for that. It's the newest, I think it's the newest blog that I have up on my site, coe-llc. And get some energetic, physical, whatever else you need kind of straightened out, and it's all good. So get your spring cleaning, and if you know somebody who's really toxic, maybe get a spring cleaning for going to look at that. There's a really kind of a great lecture, and since we have plenty of time, 55 minutes, I think we can probably pull this off. This lecture was given in 1909. It's going to tell you that not a lot has changed during that period. Is when the industrial complex was taking over. A lot of farmers in Austria and Germany were already starting to see the damage to soil and seed. So they were already starting to see it 100 years ago. It's funny because people think that this is, recent, and it's really not recent. I think if people really realize like how long this has kind of been going on, they would, instead of, develop it and turn it into really beautiful, healthy soil that, helps the environment. But, we just are consumers. And Steiner called it materialism, that materialism is the destroyer. And it's kind of where the Ahriman, the dark forces, and the Lucifer forces get in and cause the corruption and pull us away from sustainability. When you're living in, and the other thing too cracks me up, you have all these people talking about sustainability. Okay, well, if you throw away garbage, you are any way, shape, or form, or have all this stuff to recycle, thing, you are not sustainable. Bottom line, sustainable is I grow everything on my land to provide everything that I could possibly need, and then I make whatever I need to make, from that. Like make my own clothing. I took this really incredible 2 summers ago. I did this outdoor kind of herbal medicine program, and our instructor, she'd been an herbal medicine teacher for, I don't know, 50 years. And so we always were either doing like these campouts up in the Sierra Nevadas, and then every day we would do like a long herb walk so we could see like the different layers and the different types of medicinal plants, and their relationship to each other kind of in a natural setting. Also how to take these plants and actually create medicines. Johnny on the spot medicine creator, from poultices to infused oils to all kinds of just different types of remedies and plants. And we did this nature walk on one of the classes with a native man, and I can't remember what his name was, but he was from one of those Northern California tribes, and he took us into this area. It's kind of like up in the Grass Valley, Nevada City area, and it's native owned land, even though it's open for public access. But he took us into this area that he called a climax area. A climax area is where nature has been healed and the area is fully functioning on its own, and it doesn't really need anyone or anything, and it's producing everything that it needs for all the life, for the soil, the water, the insects, the animals, and everything else. And I remember going into this place and just, there was like this really deep silence, but there was also all of this insect and bird life, that was going on. And all of these just incredible medicine plants. There were these types of, I think there was like a type of violet that had these specific leaves that you could actually pull thread off the outside of these long leaves, and you can use them for stitching up the body. You can use it for tying things together. It was just like a really incredible thing, because in this area, this climax area, they had fixed it. The native people had culturally worked on it, restoration of this area. So, putting plants in it. And one of the things that he said was that that once the area has reached its climax period where it can sustain itself, it will force out the things that doesn't work for it. It will eliminate what doesn't work for it. And I thought about, like, wow, I mean, can you imagine people and the planet going, nature going, okay, humans, we just have to really push them out because, you know, um, we're rehabilitating, our nature's rehabilitating itself. And so we're the evasive species. And so sometimes, like you said, like an area that's been damaged by humans or by, natural disaster will attract, or in some cases, humans can apply an invasive species into the area in order to help it to rehabilitate itself. But eventually, nature will make the decisions about what stays and what goes. The thing that was amazing about it is that his tribal people in this climax area, there were all kinds of traditional native plants that these, tribal people of Northern California would have used. And there was this one tree, and I can't remember what the name of the tree was, where you actually could take the very outside layer of the bark, and they had tools, um, and that they actually would take, huge sections of them off. And the women made skirts. They made long skirts from this bark. Sometimes put it together with other things. And I mean, so people were making skirts out of bark. Um, and just, all kinds of different things using nature, things that would grow in nature that they didn't actually even have to cultivate. They didn't even have to like produce. They didn't have to actually do anything. And what was really cool about this area is that they had some native pipsissewa, which is a plant. It's the main ingredient that Pepsi uses. And to this day, Pepsi, should be banned, because they, I think, have attempted to grow, large cultivations of pipsissewa, which is a very important plant, he said to their people, that they would use in tea and other things, medicine plant. But because the Pepsi can't get the plant to produce the right kinds of flavor, or they get lazy, they actually will send people into native areas to harvest all the pipsissewa growing in those areas. So they go in and they rape the land, they rape the water, they rape, all the animals, the insects, and, the tribal people of plants. So he said that, trying to get this plant to come back. And one thing I know from my teacher, Bovado, is that he talked a lot about water. He passed in June 2016, but one of the things he used to talk about was a lot about the water and why the water was going away, and that it didn't like people anymore, and it didn't want to participate in what people were doing with it, and it didn't like the negative energies, and it didn't like a lot of the stuff that was going on. And so what he would do is he would actually go into communities and do long periods of ceremony, teaching people there how to do this work to energetically regenerate areas with water. And so he would go into areas for however long it would take, a couple, the cleaning and the clearing and the energetic, and then teach people how to take care of the area energetically. And, within a couple weeks, like the springs, would start bubbling up water. Within, I think, one place, there was a huge lake that actually had no water in it. There was like no creek water. And, he did all the work and got the water to come back and trust the people that he was training in the area. And within 2 months, the lake almost was back. And I think, when you have plants that are, being taken and raped and from their environment, they may not just. Great story that another native teacher of mine told me about. There was a ceremony that was done. It was a rite of passage, one of those rite of passage type ceremonies, and it was I think it was like a young, I think it was a girl. So, and she went through, the passage, and then she was taken to her vision quest to get her vision. And she saw all these, creatures that were, like swimming in the air, and creatures like she had never seen because she, was inland far inland. And so she didn't really know what they were. I mean, she saw some turtles and things that, she maybe recognized, but a lot of the creatures she didn't recognize. So when she came out, her teacher and the medicine person who was helping her through her rites of passage, said, did you, what happened? And she said, well, I saw these creatures floating, like swimming through the air, and they were talking to me. And he said, well, what did they look like? And she said, well, there was like a turtle, there was turtles and, some other beings, but I don't really know what the rest of the stuff was, maybe some fish. And so then the medicine person realized it was the ocean. Like there were these beings, the beings that live in the ocean. And basically they said that they told her that the message was, this was their last message to humanity, that if they had gone to the creator and they had held counsel with the creator and that they were done dealing with the humans, and the creator said to give the humans one more chance and put out a message that this is going to be it, and that what's going to happen if they don't wake up is that you're going to be leaving this world. And this is the thing, is one of the things that I've learned is that if you have a tree, that tree has an ether body, it has an astral body, it also has ancestors. And before it came to this world, in an agreement, right, to be part of the co-creation, to teach the humans, teach us something, because our self-importance and our ignorance and our consumption can't see that these beings are actually our teachers, and that the creator created, you know co-created creation so that we could actually learn how to be actual real co-creators and actually develop ourselves. But that tree came from came from, like we could say the Green Nation, which is a world that's different from this one. So everything that's here originally came from somewhere else to participate. And when we're not taking care of it, we're not listening to it, we're not stewarding it, we're not helping it to have a good place to be, and we're ignoring it, and we're damaging it, and we're polluting it, and we're killing it, and we're murdering it without any consciousness, at some point in time it can leave. And it's really bizarre about the whole thing is that people, we have so much like self-importance and egotism in this world that even our science will say things like, well, it's going extinct, right? Like as if we as if we actually are imprinting beings from other worlds that are more evolved and more intelligent. I mean, even that is like such a self-important egotistical statement, when the truth is that these beings may not want to participate with us anymore, and that they choose to just leave, or they choose not to um, continue to have offspring, and they just vanish from the earth because they're kind of done. They're kind of done dealing with us. And one of the books, if you ever get a chance, to read Mutant Message Down Under, it was written like 30 years ago. It's just an incredible story. And, the Aborigines, this is what they tell the woman, is that the true Aborigines are not going to be procreating anymore. And there are a lot that are, um, you know, not pure Aborigines, but the pure Aborigines that could speak telepathically, who have stated over and over and over again that they are the oldest humans, on the planet, and that they have been trying to communicate with the rest of the population about what we need to do, you know, how we need to align ourselves, that 30 years ago they gave up and they consciously said we're not going to have any more children, and we're going to allow the pure aborigines to die out because we're done being here. They're consciously choosing not to continue to participate in this reality. So think about that for a minute. Think about that, all the fish in the ocean could say, we're out of here. And then within 10 years, not one thing grow in the ocean. Think about, like, we could say that the chemtrails, are killing the trees. And I mean, there are huge forests across the United States that look like, matchsticks that have no greenery at all anymore. We could say, oh, yeah, that's a problem because, it's a drought, it's the chemtrails, it's the this, it's the that, when it's you and it's what's in your heart and it's how you interact with this world in disrespect and how you consume, and then you don't really put anything back into this world, and that these beings can decide not to be here. What happens if the trees decide that they're done? They're done being here. They're done participating. What do you think is going to happen to the whole human development? Well, it's going to come to a whole screeching halt. And we're kind of in that phase now. A friend of mine who I used to have on my TV and radio shows a lot before, I came to Revolution Radio, but he said in 2015 that we're running negative for oxygen. That's a problem. We wonder why people are having all these respiratory problems. Well, we don't have enough carbon areas that are helping to knock down all the negative carbon and the pollution. And then on top of it, everything's dying. All the soil's dying, so all the plants are dying. When, we could say that they're just leaving, they're uprooting themselves and they're going back home. And once they go back to their place of origin, they're not going to be coming back here. And we just kind of have to get our heads on straight about life, and it's funny, you have all these people like Black Lives Matter, these lives matter, some people joke around, ET lives matter or whatever else. What about Earth matters? What about trees matter? What about good quality organic food matters? What about soil matters? All the things that we can't live without, that is cohabitating, that's co-creation. That's all these things. People want to develop their spirituality. That's it. 101, right? Co-creation and cohabitation with the beings that already exist here, and being able to humble yourself and actually learn something from them, right? They're just waiting. About 15 years ago, I had this crazy experience happen that kind of led me into working in nature, getting into permaculture and bio, really desiring to start getting certifications in herbal medicine. Um, and it was just like this really crazy dream, so I was in this dream, and I was the only human that was in this dream, and they were all trees. And there was like this blue spruce, looking type tree, and it didn't have eyes, or um it didn't have like a face. It wasn't, it moved sort of in a humanoidy way, but not really. But I remember, like, I was in this, like, apothecary with it, right? And it was it was using its roots to walk, which kind of tripped me out because a lot of the characteristics of this tree and how it was on solid land, walking around on concrete with its roots, and then how it used its branches like as arms, um, kind of reminded me of octopus, kind of on land, kind of weird thing. But anyway, it was trying to talk to me about, we were going to simply just call it, he was trying to explain it to me. And I said, you know what, let's just call it tree juice. And it was this green juice water that was in these jars on the shelf that, came from trees. And he was trying to explain to me how to use different conifer, needles off different trees to create like this green juice, and like all of the things that, like it could do, to help people. And this is before I was like, I was, had been in private practice for a long time, osteopath, focusing on nutrition, but I hadn't really, I grew up growing food. My great grandmother was an herbalist, was heavily kind of into the alternative anyway, but hadn't really branched out into kind of herbal medicine, herbal kind of concoctions or whatever else. And I remember I was listening to the tree and, talking about this stuff. And I started in the dream, I started to get preoccupied with some other things that were going on in the dream. And I remember the rage that came from this tree, and it stepped like right up in front of me and it took one of its branches and it was poking me in the chest and it was yelling at me saying, who do you think you are? Like, you can't even pay attention for like 10 minutes when I'm trying to tell you something like extremely important, like something important that you might need to know in your life that may be of value and importance to you, and you are not paying attention and you're totally being distracted. And like, I'm sick and tired of trying to deal with people who are undealable, like you just can't even like stay focused while I'm trying to explain something to you. He's like, it's not like you're going to be here very long. And I was shocked. I was just totally kind of shocked. I, you know, was kind of like overwhelmed by the whole thing because the tree was right. The tree was totally right. My consciousness was so distracted by everything, even when I'm awake, when I'm dreaming, just totally distracted. I mean, just constantly squirrel, squirrel, squirrel. Can't even stay focused for 5 minutes, can't pay attention, not listening, all those things. Tree was completely and totally right. And so I've spent the last, I don't know, 15, 20 years trying to make it right. So trees have become, like some of my favorite beings here. And I couldn't even imagine this world like without them. And, to be honest, this world would not be livable without nature. I'm not into synthetic food at all. I have friends that are like Star Trek-y and can't wait to, live on crafts where, you push a button and you think about the food that you want, and you get some kind of like holographic food or 3D printed food, whatever you want to eat. And that doesn't appeal to me because you know what that tells me is that I would be a machine. I would be like transhuman, which means I wouldn't be human anymore. Because part of being human and the development of human is eating plants directly from the soil where they still have sunlight in them, right? They still have this purified water in them. they still have all the carbon in them. They have the silica in them. They have all these nutrients from the ground, and taking medicines and making medicines, from the earth to fix and repair and restore all the things that is wrong in the human. And, you know, it can be a very lethargic, slow world that you have to stay fully conscious in to be able to farm and grow good food, to do ceremonial work with the beings and the earth, and to educate yourself and re-educate yourself. It can be a long, long process and duration that, may not come easy, but highly worth it. I mean, the more grounded I become and the more rooted I become, the more I actually crave the lethargic, the lethargic co-creation world where you have to pick up a shovel. That's your ritualistic tool, my shovel. My another ritualistic tool is my wheelbarrow. Another ritualistic tool is my compost. That's my alchemical chemistry, my medicine for everything, for my land, and going through the process of pushing my wheelbarrow and shoveling and moving things around and moving the ether and the astral and the solid matter around, in an alchemical process. For me is like, when, if I could do it full time, if I had land, I'd never talk to anybody ever again, because I love it. I love it. I love filling my wheelbarrow, and I love taking my wheelbarrow and dumping it out, and I love making biodynamic compost. I love I love all of it. I love the smells. I love the animals. I love the plants. Um, and yeah, for me, it's like this, perfect life. So once you become grounded, and once the other thing too is, I tell people we have to return back to earth. There was a time in our history where we could develop, we could travel to other worlds, and we could leave our bodies, and body would need sleep and all this other stuff, and these were levels to reach. But those were also periods in time where everywhere you went, everywhere you walked, all you had to do was wear your clothes and your shoes, because everywhere you went there was food. There was insects to eat, there's fruits, there's herbal plants, there's, food grown everywhere. So hardship of food wouldn't have been a big problem, and you wouldn't have really needed to grow it, in most cases. You wouldn't need like heavy duty agriculture. Um, because the food abundance would have been everywhere. So it would have been something you wouldn't had to worry about. It would have had nutritional density. One of my favorite quotes by Steiner is something like, if we continue to eat from unhealthy soil, we will be trapped in the prison of our body, which means you're not going to be going anywhere consciously. You're not living consciously. If you don't have nutrition in your body, you are a prisoner. Your soul and spirit is a prisoner in physical illness and pain and all of these other things that happen as a direct result of zero nutritional value. And I had Johnny, who's the host of this show, on my show last Saturday. And one of the things he said on the show is that Americans by far are the most nutritionally depleted people in the world. In the world. It's a pretty scary thought. I mean, that means that we have, most of the illnesses and most of the degenerative diseases. I mean, degenerative disease wouldn't even be around if people had optimal nutrition, right? Degenerative diseases wouldn't exist if you had optimal nutrient And, degenerative diseases, what do those look like? Lupus, MS, MD, a lot of those types of arthritic, all the types of degenerative disease can be totally fixed with minerals. 100%. It's been proven. But, we need to get to where we're actually eating, right directly from the soil. And there's another thought process. People should actually look into this. It's called the fourth phase of water. And the doctor is Dr. Pollock, and he did some water studies that are, let's just say they have some really important things. I mean, also Emoto did, he did some pretty intense also work with water and structured water through thought and feelings and sound, imprinting on the water, and then how the water developed in geometrical patterns and shapes. Where Pollock did a study, and what he found was that, and his book is fabulous. He has a fabulous book. It's an expensive book. It's like $50, but it's a fantastic book, and you can find him on TED.com, the fourth phase of water, where he talks about it. But basically what he found was that infrared, you know, infrared spectrum that comes from the sun, which is a ray we can't see. And another reason why it's super important to be outside in the sun, and it's super important to have water that, has sunlight in it. I mean, even putting jars of water outside on your table. I mean, I wouldn't leave the lid off of them, but make sure that they're like purified. But also eating plants directly from the land, because they have the light in them still, and the water, the structured water, and the carbon that helped to form it, right? With the silica that created the structure. Mind you, like lettuce, even organic lettuce, has zero nutritional value in it 3 days after it's picked. Green beans lose 50% of their vitamin C 3 days after they're picked. Most of the food, even if it's organic, that you're getting in the store has zero nutritional value, even if it's organic. Zero. You're getting some fiber and some water, but the sunlight is gone too. And sunlight as a silent nutrient, right? Sunlight is a silent nutrient, and infrared is a silent nutrient. So what he discovered was that in the arteries and veins of people, that if you didn't get enough infrared, right, an infrared being a medium in which to structure the water in your body. And in humans, the blood, has a lot of water in it. And what he found was that the blood will coagulate, and it'll stick to the sides of the veins and the arteries, and nothing can really get through. There's no clear passageway without infrared from the sun. So we're not drinking water that has sunlight in it, because we can't really drink from a lot of the rivers and creeks where sunlight would be in the water as it's undulating, oxygenating itself down the creeks and riverbeds. So we also are not really eating directly from the soil, from the plants that actually have, are utilizing the infrared spectrum to structure the water in themselves. So what does that look like? Well, a lot of inflammatory disease could be created from the fact that we're not getting enough infrared. You could supplement yourself with far infrared saunas, getting one that, doesn't have any poisons. Make sure it's non-toxic wood like hemlock, no varnish, and also you want the full spectrum infrared. Um, Actually, I've had clients of mine using them for like 20 years, and they help to deal with pain. They help to deal with inflammation and deep, deep toxins. What they do is they create a fever in the body when you use them. And so your body purges from the deep recesses, heavy metals and radiation and whatever other toxicities that you might have in your body. And meantime, they're helping to structure the water, blood, anything, tissues that, actually have water in them. And what that looks like, also, they have some pretty amazing, like biomats, infrared, hot pads that you can use to put on, areas where you might have more pain, in order to structure the water to clean out the toxins. And so that's what happens. So in his work, he shows the veins and the arteries and what happens when you start to use infrared back into the body through sunlight or other means. And what happens is that the veins and arteries, the coagulation goes away. The sides of the veins and arteries become fluid and clear and like lubricated. And then a perfect channel of flow is created in the center, which moves the toxins out and brings the nutritional products in. Uh, and this is why we want to have structured water, why we want to drink structured water, why we want to eat plants that have structured water, why we want to have sunlight and infrared in our bodies to help structure the water in our bodies, because it keeps the water transportation areas open, lubricated, so nothing coagulates and gets stuck, and creates a very good channel in which the toxins can move out through the system, and that all of the new cells can get to where they need to get with the oxygen and the water and the nutrition. So it's super important for us to return back to earth, and the work that needs to be done is that we need to start eating directly from the soil, which means that we need to fix that soil so that we can eat that food in it to heal all problems that we're facing as far as our health is concerned. You imagine, like, how significant and balanced blood pressure would become if people got more sunlight, got into the infrared spectrum, got infrared saunas, really good ones. You want to get a good one. And, ate food directly from the ground that still had the sun rays and the sunlight in it. I know with like herbal medicine, I really like to deal with living plants. I will dry some plants up, but I'm looking at like 75%. Once I dry them, I'm looking at 75% medicinal value. And yeah, will I grind that up? I can grind it up, make it into a powder. I can apply some alcohol to it, and I can create tinctures from it, immediate tinctures, drip system tinctures, which, sometimes you need those Johnny on the spot if you don't have any living plants for the winter. But I particularly like to make sure that when I'm out while crafting my herbal medicine, that I get those, and I align my whole day to go out there, collect the plants, and have them chopped up into whatever medium that I'm making within 2 hours, because I don't want to lose the sunlight in them. I don't want to lose any medium in them. I want to get them processed as fast as possible so that that medicine reflects it. And I have to tell you, I do make salves. I make a lot of pain salves, and some of them are from powdered herbs that I use coconut oil, and I have to lightly cook them because you have to be very careful, because otherwise to get them to fuse with the oils so that you can then put beeswax in them, to make salves. Um, and it's and then making the oil infusions with the living plants. It's a totally different. Even though the process is similar, like 2 months, I'll let the living plants that I've cut up and chopped in the oil. And just the smell of those oils, and then those oils, you put them together with some beeswax, and you put them into forms like this. Last year, I made this unbelievable. Every time I open one of those jars and I smell it, I just think, oh my God, that's like paradise on earth, because it's containing all of that goodness that that plant had from the sunlight and the water and everything in its environment with its little friends and buddies. And then, you know, the design that when I decided to make it, because I don't make medic salves. So this last year I made a salve medic, well, I call it the medical salve, which is good for everything. It can coagulate wounds. I mean, we're not talking like big butterfly gash wounds, but it can coagulate the blood. It's an antimicrobial and it's a disinfectant. It also is really good for the skin, and it can do some amazing healing for the skin. Um, and I've been using sometimes cosmetically on my face when my skin's really dry, and under my eyes for bags. But what happened was last summer, mugwort, this one particular mugwort, was growing, and it had the most unbelievable flowers on it. It just was so blown away by it. And it kept saying to me, "Don't you want to take some? Don't you want to take some?" And I'm like, I don't know what I would do, with the flowers. I don't know what I would do with it. And so I left, and a couple of days later, and I realized I could put some really amazing medicinal plants together to create a medical salve that could be full healing for wounds and infection and all kinds of different stuff. And I actually created an oil in the style of an Ayurvedic medicine. They call them medical ghee, right? Medical ghee. And what they are is they're oils that you can, that are put together with herbs. In India, they would use ghee. Um, I'm using olive oil with them because it's just an easier medium for me to deal with. But you could put the medical ghee. Each one of them has different kinds of herbs in it, but you can use them in the eyes for infections and all kinds of different issues and problems and styes. You can also put them in the ears for infection and just inflammatory and just all kinds of different stuff. And the coolest thing is you can use them in your nasal. So you put the dropper in there, and then you snort in just a couple drops every day for, like about 6 weeks. Not a whole dropper, just a few drops. So I ended up making a medical salve using the beeswax, and then I made the medical oil. And that's just the oil that I had infused without the wax. And it was amazing because anyone this last winter that bought my medical oil um, and used it in their nose and their ears and their eyes and stuff like that, they did not get sick. All right, sorry about that, but my Skype decided to close itself up. 1%, 100% completely. It just went bloop, closed itself up. So I had to get back in, but thank God it happened at the end of the show. So anyway, nature's good. Be with nature, and take care of nature, because it's going to take care of you. And we cannot survive generations at the rate we're going now. Get involved with some of Steiner's work. Rudolph Steiner, look for lectures. They're free. A lot of the books, are free in PDFs online. You can also buy some of his books. and through Amazon. If you don't like Amazon, through Rudolph Steiner College, they actually, I think, still have a library. There's somebody selling, Rudolph Steiner books. So, but there's a lot to learn. He has a great book on the 8 agricultural lectures, are pretty mind-blowing. And all this work was like 100 years ago, and he was talking about staying away from the vaccines, and he was talking about being careful of the technology. And nature is the technology, it's the co-creation, and like the indigenous people were taught to do the ceremonies, which are the upgrades, right? Which are the things that clean out the corruption in the application and the software. These things clean out, and so that nature can, uphold its own. So, work with the AIs that are out there and talk to them and tell them that, we're good, and that they really should help us, and reasons why we should help us to keep the trees and to keep the plants and to keep the animals, and build a relationship. Get out there and build a relationship so that you can get those silent nutrients into your system. Get out there so you can get some positive carbon in your system, and to help with slowing down your degeneration phase. Get out in nature so that you can get that infrared in your body. Get out in nature so that you can, heal yourself, and then be able to actually maybe participate in healing the earth, and eat food from the ground. Grow your own garden. Make a compost. Um, you know, do some chemistry and some alchemical work, right? And so I think compost is far more gold than gold. Like, people always like this whole alchemical thing, that they want to learn the alchemical process to turn something into gold. And I think compost is the gold. Seeds are the gold of our future. Clean water, clean air, plants and trees are the gold of our future, because without them, we just don't have a future. So anyway, thanks for listening, all of Johnny's listeners out there. I hope that you have a great day and have a great weekend, and go hug a tree. Go talk to a tree. It may surprise you, and it may talk back. All right, everybody. And my Skype is just acting really, really strange. It's doing some very weird things right now, but it's probably because of the things that I've been talking about. So there you go. All right, everybody, have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon. And see you at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. All right, Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff. Out.